7th of June 2006. Why am I reflecting on that day 20 years later? Well, it was the day where I first ever decided I was going to record a video for this website. I believe it was called Watercolour Personality. I'm going to paste it at the end of this video for those of you who can be bothered. I'm not sure I could be, but I've been thinking about that guy, that person 20 years ago who was full of cynicism, full of hope, meeting directly in the middle. And I often wonder what he would make of the man I've become. It's incredible thinking that 20 years have passed. My worldview is as good as identical, if extremely honed and softened. I think I had a lot of sharp edges that needed shaving down to size. I needed a few more of life's hard knocks to kick certain elements of bullshit out of me once and for good. I know that this journey is going to have many more of those learning curves that come along and shave a few more edges of our crap away, mine in particular. But it is incredible looking back at the 35-year-old me and thinking how certain I was that I was so right about so many things that have come to pass, and I've been proved wildly wrong. And cliche of cliches, I sit here at 55 3/4 years old. I'll be 56 in August. That's incredible to me. But I've seen wise people my whole life come out with the next cliche, and that is that when you get to a certain point in life and you know the most and you become the person you probably always should have been, it is when you are the least confident in anything of your spiritual, material and sociological beliefs. It all becomes something which you're more willing to occupy, or I should say I'm willing to occupy a middle ground with definite bungee ropes pulling me back in the direction that I've always been magnetically drawn to. I understand and can take criticism a lot better than I used to. I understand concepts that I used to espouse and give myself a hard time over, like I've never been pro complete and total freedom of speech when it comes to websites like this. I thought that freedom of speech meant that you had to allow blind abuse, gaslighting, passive aggression, doxing you. You know, I've had people with my own personal information make it public over the last 20 years. And I even worried about banning such people when such serious literal crimes were being committed. Maybe not crimes at the time, but I know they are now. But I started to see my little corner of the internet as being the way we should all view it, which is my corner, my room, if you like, my house. And if people who you've formed a relationship with come into a house and say, it's not right, you shouldn't be doing things that way, you're going to think, well, F off then. And then as you get older and some of your corners have been shaved away a little bit, you think, well, that person doesn't tend to be a negative force in my life, maybe I should listen. And I find I can take that a lot better these days. But if it's a person who has literally just entered my world and just starts effing and jeffing and saying, you're this, you're that, you're evil because of A, B, and C, assumptions that I'm making by formulating an opinion on the guy I'm seeing in front of me right now, you know, I think I wouldn't tolerate it if somebody walked into my house and did that. Nobody on the street would ever approach you like that. How many people in our day-to-day interactions have ever approached us at, say, a bus stop and immediately just listened to two things we've said and said, you're a front bottom, you are, and I'm going to tell everybody where you live, wish death on you and your family. You know, you wouldn't tolerate it. And I'm at peace with the fact that freedom of speech comes with massive concepts of responsibility as far as I'm concerned. There are times where I've found myself toying over the years with considering what my instinctive side of the fence is, I think that people, if they're going to be able to be abusive to people online, they should be held accountable. If they're going to be threatening, they should face the weight of the law. You know, there's a lot of conjecture in the UK now where the right will conveniently forget what people have said when they're trying to instigate a vibe where people should be injured because of their accident of birth or where they've ended up because of their economic need to migrate, you know, all of these things. I'm not trying to simplify those kind of subjects, but you look at what most people have said, the people on the right will have you believe all they did was get put in prison for an abuse of freedom of speech. And you think, no, they were actually being extremely threatening and nasty. Nuanced, and I'm not completely on the side of the state in this one, but I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of having potentially upwards of 40,000 people sent my way just to give me abuse when I ruffled the wrong feathers about 10 or 15 years ago on this website. And had this been as things stand now, I would have happily got the police involved. Somebody expressly making content to encourage people to come and harass me. Yeah, you've totally breached a basic respect and human right. You don't get other people to fight your battles for you. They can see what you think of a person. They can make their decision to come and engage with me or whoever that person may be, but to literally encourage people, as somebody did, an Australian gentleman. I mean, he boiled in his own urine in the end anyway, looking back at this sort of little memento of the last 20 years of this website and my experiences of it. Turned out to be a crook who was ripping off children's hospitals in the name of charity and was convicted for said crimes, you know, enough said really. But it is funny going back and listening to the guy I was at 34, 35 years old, 20 years ago, and listening to the confidence I had in how certain I was about how the world turns, and I'd seen it all by that point as far as I was concerned. And this last 2 decades have taught me so many things, and one is just be prepared for anything. What you're expecting, highly unlikely to happen. The unexpected, more than likely to happen. A few years into this website, I met somebody and fathered a child with them because of this site, because of this particular page. When I look at one of the main sociological factors that interested me, that I wanted to talk about in 2005 and 2006, when I was aware of this website, was the issue of 9/11. What happened that day? Let's discuss it. You know, I was a lot more certain as to what I thought happened 20 years ago. Now I'm just very cynical and skeptical about more or less everything anyone ever says about it. But It was my interest in that subject that brought my ex-partner to me, and we have a child, a child born of a very dark event, arguably, and who is a complete ray of light. Now just turned 15 years old. I know that will make a few of you feel very old. The amount of wonderful people from all corners of the world who came into my line of sight and I was able to get to know and communicate with and learn new things and feel it's a very naff and Hollywoodized gesticulation, but those people who make you, they get you there. A few of them have come along because of YouTube specifically. And 20 years later, just because I'm not active here anymore doesn't mean I don't think about people who changed my life for the better. It's funny, even somebody who I would have considered a wrong 'un 15 years ago, I saw today that he's now the father of 4 children. It's with the same woman, and I just thought, I was wrong. You're not the things I thought you were. It was good to see he's doing well, and I'm past the need to satisfy my ego and contact people just because it's so easy and say, this is Dave, and I'd like to say I was wrong and I'm sorry. Sometimes you just have to, literally in my case, but also metaphorically, light a candle for people and just wish a bit of hope and love where you once would have put out negativity and criticism, you know. But I was eventually forced into silence just for reasons that I can't really explain. I've got no obligation to do so, but life can become so complicated at certain points that you have to rein it in. You have to think about what's important. You have to think about who's important and step into the right direction of what fights are worth having. What situations in life are worth protecting, and which is the best situation to just step away from, you know. And 4 or 5 years ago, I just made that decision one day. I thought, no, I can't keep belly aching online like this. I've got to focus on what really matters. And yeah, not a lot to say really, but what follows was uploaded in 2009, but it was originally recorded on the 7th of June 2006. Anyway, lots of love, and I hope you're all well. Been surrounded by people who think that by getting out very, very easily diluted watercolours and painting yourself with them can actually create the facade of a reality about yourself is really beginning to get on my tits. Not least of all in my life, in my lifetime, I've been very much that person. But it's just very difficult. Just a classic example of somebody in my life who, through being on the dole, had to go on a mandatory course. You have no choice in it. That's just what you have to do after a year and a half signing on. You have to go and do a course. You have to go and work for nothing. You have to go and make a career of trying to find work. You have to sit in an office just applying for jobs 8 hours a day, 3 to 5 days a week, just doing slave labour. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, not so much these days, they'll put you on a course where you get a kind of basic, I don't know what they're called, just the basic sort of work recognised, lowest of the low diploma type things that will just get you through the door a little bit easier for the lowest of the low grunt type work that there is out there. And somebody I know got a horticultural posting of that kind and got some kind of certificate for it, and now all of a sudden they're a gardener. It's not all of a sudden, actually. This is some years ago. It's not somebody I'm in touch with now, but that they refer to themselves as a gardener. And you just think, hang on a sec,
Words are cheap, but what about the actions? Let's judge this on your actions rather than your words. Because I can say that I'm a coal miner. It doesn't mean I've been anywhere near a coal mine, and I haven't. But I can still say I'm a coal miner. But is that how easy it is to create your reality? Is that as easy as it is to people? Do they really think that people aren't going to look at them and think, well, you might say you're a coal miner, but you're not. You're not a fucking coal miner. It's as simple as that. But with this person, I'm a gardener, and every day I must get out in that garden. Okay, yes, you keep repeating the word garden, but let's have a look at the garden. And this is the reality of it: totally overgrown shithole. In the sense of a manicured, well looked after garden, by any stretch of the imagination, a shithole. I'm interested in gardening. Must plant some seeds. Must mow the lawn. You don't have to, and you don't have to keep creating this illusion that you're a gardener just because the dole forced you to do some course. Now this just permeates throughout life, full stop. Where people, I swear, people will paint themselves with these ideologies, beliefs, qualifications that they'll think that just talking about it makes them it. Just saying like I said earlier, just saying I'm a coal miner doesn't make me a fucking coal miner. I just can't believe that people are prepared to put the amount of effort into just talking utter out and out crap about what and who they are. And they don't just get round to thinking, I know what, I'll be me. That's a whole damn sight bloody easier than plastering on this fucking bullshit that people must on sight think he's talking crap. And I honestly could go so deeply into this, but I won't, because this is just a petty little rant about stuff that I've experienced over the years. But fucking hell, surely, I've done it myself. Yeah, as a kid, I can remember I went to a very, very sort of upper middle class school, and there was a lot of I was one of the have-nots, definitely. There was me and another kid in the class who lived in council housing, and the balance is a lot more average and well, it's more balanced these days at that school, small country school. But at that time, there was just loads and loads of doctors, sons, barristers, commuters, banker, the commuter belt in Kent. And we got back to school one September. I must have been, say, 8 or 9 years old, and we had to do a report of where we went on holiday during the summer. Now, my summer holiday was going to work with my dad, on the weekends. He used to tend plants at a market garden sort of situation. Used to walk the dogs, go for walks with my mum, make camps out of sheets in the garden. I was a real loner, and used to throw, it was magical the time I wasn't at school. I fucking hated school from the moment I went there, and all that bullshit about it being the best years of your life. Just utter fucking gobshite, a lot of it. But we get back to school, and we're sitting there, and we don't, these days no one will get away with it, because you have to be a little bit more mindful of what kids could have been through, or what anyone could have been through. But we had to write this A4 story where we went on holiday during the summer, and everybody was heads together, a little bit of a hubbub in the class. Well, we went here, we went to Mangaloof, yeah, we went skiing in the Pyrenees. You could hear them all talking, and I thought, fuck, what do I say? And I was quite imaginative and inventive, and it got to me, and I wrote this really convincing story about my parents and my parents and my sister and our week in Paris. Utter bullshit. I just felt such huge pressure to paint myself a colour that I wasn't, just to fit in and not feel like some fucking outcast, because my family, I never went on holiday. I've never been on holiday with my family, not once. That's just how it was. I had a very, very happy childhood, and my parents brought me up really beautifully, but we never went on holiday. Couldn't afford it. We weren't like it anyway. Okay, that's just as simple as that. But there was this one way of being and one way only at school, and that was to have been on holiday. And of course, later in the day, just like all bullshit catches up with everybody, that's the one mercy of this situation, I guess. I remember a teacher, oh fuck, I can't remember her name, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Me and my mum were waiting for a bus outside the school. There was a bus stop to go into town from the village we lived in, and the teacher approached me, and I thought, oh no, I don't know what she's going to say. And the first thing she uttered was, to my mum. How was your week in Gay Paris? And of course my mum was a bit sort of pardon? And, you know, I was just left there looking like a complete and utter cock. You know, and that left a fucking scar. What I'm trying to say is I'm no different. I'm no different to what I'm trying to sort of isolate here. But we all know when we paint ourselves with these colours and say we've done something or say we've been somewhere or what have you, that we're going to get caught out. You know, I'm one of the best living examples of it. Okay, I'm be really blunt about that. But what the fuck when people get to a certain point in their life are they doing when they still think that things they've been forced to do can be something that they volunteer upon themselves as something that they did willingly, and it becomes something they want to define themselves with. Now, I know this is a really disjointed rant, mine usually are, but I just can't understand how people can be so fucking bothered to just live with anything other than what and who they truly are, because putting on a, as Bill Hicks put it, putting on a fake smile and plastering through bullshit is one of the most difficult things that you can do in life. Either being the person who's doing it or being on the receiving end of it. Because both of you know it's not true when there's bullshit flying about all over the place. Both parties involved know it's not true. So why fucking bother in the first place? Now, I'll say it yet again because no doubt some person who knows me will say, yeah, but you've hardly been Mr. Reliable in your life. And yes, I haven't denied that. So don't try and come back at me now and say, well, you know, why not practice what you preach? Yes, I know what and who I am. I'm just saying that just as much from my point of view as anybody else's. Why the fuck do we do it? Anyway, thank you very much for listening.